Welcome to Football Fever in another big jam-packed episode again, and we have our boys already here in this on the Zoom via link. We've got, of course, the best football agent in the planet, I believe, in Australia, Tony Stealth Rallis, and my man, the fanatical Newcastle Geordie fan, Andy O. Good evening, boys.
Each other.
Evening, Chubbs.
Well, the A-League's heating up, Andy and Tone heating up. We've got the big elimination semi-finals this week, and what a round it was. We had the ding-dong battle between Sydney FC and Adelaide United, who was going to get that last spot. It did go to Adelaide United. Andy, how about we go to you quickly and let's go through the A-League results and what it meant. How did the league table finish?
Yeah, Chubbs. Well, it started with Central Coast at home, going down 2-1 to Brisbane Roar. Then we had that game, as you mentioned, on Saturday, which was Sydney FC's last chance, last hope to get into the top six. They went down with a bit of a whimper, we should say, which we'll talk about in a second, but 5-1 to Melbourne City in that game. The goals came nice and early, Melbourne City absolutely dominating. Then we had Western United 4, Auckland FC, who were crowned minor premiers last week too. Western Sydney Wanderers came away with another, I guess, the second derby against Macarthur FC with a 3-1 victory. Perth Glory did the job yesterday against Wellington Phoenix with a 2-0 win. And the last game of the round of the regular season saw Melbourne Victory and Newcastle Jets fight out a 1-1 draw. So as you mentioned, Chubbs, the top six or final six heading into the finals, we had Auckland, who finished in first spot. Melbourne City ended up getting that second spot, that crucial second spot, ahead of both Western United and Western Sydney Wanderers. Melbourne Victory in fifth on 43 points, and we saw Adelaide sneak in by 1 point, leaving Sydney FC to rue a season of what may have been, but Adelaide ended up jagging that sixth spot with the result of that Melbourne City and Sydney FC game.
Well, Tony, you could say Sydney FC would be disappointed after how the season sort of fizzled out, especially with the and how it ended up in the Asian competition, and now how it fizzled out sort of at the end of the competition. Still, we mentioned Ufuk Talay will look set to remain there. He hasn't actually put pen to paper yet. How would Sydney FC feel about just missing out? And I mean, it was quite extraordinary a game going down 5-1 as well to Melbourne City, who not a team noted of scoring a lot of goals either.
Obviously, Sydney FC demand success. They sacked the coach that delivered 3 titles to them, or 3 cups in Steve Corica, a month after he'd won an FA Cup. So not having any trophy for the cabinet is disappointing. I think the romance of their Asian League 2, Champions League 2 run was great, but disappointing and deflating to lose to a Singaporean team. I think there'll be questions asked outside flagship players and players that bleed for that club like Anthony Caceres and Ryan Grant. I think there's got to be some question marks on the foreigners. My understanding is that some of those foreigners were more intent on shopping in Melbourne than the game. Some even had friends over during the night before the game. So I think there should be an inquiry into Sydney FC and some of the conduct of their foreigners. The state of the result, they showed no fight. If I'm Ufi Tale and I've agreed to sign a 2-year deal, I'm getting rid of at least 3 of those foreigners.
Wow. And is that down to Ufi, you reckon, Tony? Is there something a bit sort of higher up in terms of demanding authority and that sort of?
I just think that there's some characters in the dressing room that have been suspect in their professionalism because their talent carried them. And so people, when talent carries them, might, allow flexibility, and sometimes that flexibility imposes on other people in the squad. I think he's tried to play an attacking brand of football. Obviously, a salary cap league, balancing 2 competitions is not easy, especially when you're travelling in cattle class and meeting timelines and budget transport. But there's enough talent there. The positives this year is they went on a run and they lost to a Singaporean club that technically they should not have lost to. the other positives are the amount of young kids that Uffy did try to promote, so he's got to be given credit for that. But I think his senior foreigners let him down drastically.
We're already getting.
And I think it's unacceptable to keep him on.
Yeah, already even in our chat line, the live chat, people, Michael Fatula, Sydney FC finished disappointing. I think Sylvania there as well saying we didn't finish the season well. So you can see the fans are already really disappointed how the season finished there for Sydney FC.
I'm disappointed for Sydney FC fans because, to be fair to them this year, they've gone out of their way. Their crowds have been great considering the lack of, marketing in the A-League and the lack of presence. Sydney FC has been, a consistent provider of good crowds along with Auckland. I think Western Sydney Wanderers, obviously, in the back end in the last 3 months, the fans are coming back, and how great it was that. I mean, I was at the Macarthur game.
It was the biggest crowd for Macarthur ever as well.
Yeah, look, just that ground with 9,000 people is just another atmosphere, a tremendous atmosphere. And it's, if I was to buy a club tomorrow and it had to be New South Wales based, I would probably buy the Macarthur Bulls, because I think if you get the community engagement right, that 7,000 or 8,000 at Macarthur, at Campbelltown, is just an outstanding presence. So, atmosphere.
Yeah, well, I've said that all along. I live in the area, but I just feel there's not enough engagement that does come out of Macarthur Bulls. I think they could do certainly a lot more. And like you said, I've been at that ground too as well. And when it's got a bit of crowd there, the atmosphere there is very, very good. Because I remember even when Wanderers, before Macarthur came in, Wanderers were in the played a few games out of Campbelltown, and the atmosphere when they had 10, 11,000 down there was rocking. Looking quickly before we go to our first guest for the night, which is the star defender of the Western Sydney Wanderers, Anthony Panzopoulos. What will looking ahead on Friday night, we've got at Ironbag Field, of course, 7:30 night. The first elimination final is Western United versus Adelaide, and then Saturday, the 10th of May, at Combank, 7:35. The Western Sydney Wanderers are taking on Melbourne Victory.
Okay.
Two huge elimination games. We know that Auckland and Melbourne City will be waiting to play one of these opponents as well over 2 legs. But your thoughts on these games?
We can't wait to see the Victory Western Sydney Wanderers game. I'm actually saddened that those two well-supported clubs are playing off against each other, because we really need those crowds to be there. Western United is in its early stages of, trying to find its feet. Melbourne City, well, the City Group's been a disgrace as far as what their input into the community and fan engagement is. But the Wanderers Victory game for me is going to be an exciting game end to end. A lot of the A-League games were exciting and tremendous spectacles, and unappreciated in many ways if you compare it to other leagues around the world. With respect to the other game, Jesus, I can't pick a winner.
Do you think the week off would help Adelaide? Tone? I'm leaning to that. I think that week off may be a bit of a blessing in disguise for Adelaide.
I'd like to see if Carl Viet, and that's another club that does regional club that does tremendously well with regional club in the sense that it's not a major city like Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane, but Adelaide fans deserve better. Carl Viet deserves a better send-off. I hope the players stand up for him. I really do.
I can tell you just back on that Wanderers and Melbourne Victory game, guys, that obviously tickets are selling, have been snapped up quite quick, but a lot of the corporate has already been taken as well. I actually made an inquiry through a contact, my contact there, and they actually got back to me this afternoon and said, Andy, there's not much going around in terms of the corporate. I'm not sure if you're aware, Combank on that tunnel side is majority corporate. Which is a fantastic sign. It's great for the club and great for the league.
It's good. Long may it continue for clubs like the Wanderers.
Yeah, two huge games, because Western United, I thought a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people touted they were maybe the dark horse in the competition to really give Auckland a big push as favourites. But in the last few weeks, you could say, really Western Sydney Wanderers have emerged. And I think one of these teams out of this elimination final can really cause problems to either Auckland or Melbourne City come the next round. So, either of these teams go through, they are very capable of knocking one of the top two Finnish teams out of the competition as well over the two legs.
I think it's been that type of competition, hasn't it? I mean, if you look at, it's been a long time where fifth spot finished with 43 points, I believe, which is quite a high standing. Obviously, Adelaide was at 38, which has been the average sixth spot finish, but 43 and above to make the top six shows sustainability, and the right clubs are obviously involved.
And right on key as we speak about the Western Sydney Wanderers, we have one of their star man and one of their star defenders this season in Anthony Pandazopoulos. Good evening, Anthony. Your microphone, just turn your microphone on. That's all right. While Anthony's there, we'll get his microphone on.
Fixed up.
Yeah, Andy, so this Western Sydney Wanderers victory game is going to be one for the ages.
Oh, mate, I'm already copying the messages from my Melbourne victory. As you know, I spent quite a bit of time down in Melbourne. A lot of my victory fans, my friends that are fans down there, are already sending the text messages, and I think they actually are going to have a couple of them travelling up for the game, boys. So, it'll be interesting.
Are we better?
There we go. We can hear you now, champion.
There we go. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Congratulations.
Lucky you can defend better than you can use your computer system.
No, I'm like an old man.
Still, why don't you kick it off with Anthony?
Yeah, Anthony, welcome to the show, mate. We were talking earlier about the quality of the A-League games and how unappreciated some of the Australian football public is of it. The standard's been outstanding. A lot of young players coming through. This has been your breakout year. I love how your passion, your drive. Have you grown in that confidence as an outcome of your performances? Is that where the growth has come from?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been easy the more I play to kind of gain that confidence within myself, but then also to have the confidence to be a leader in that squad. As a centre back, you can see everything, so you can determine where players to go and really have a presence. And that's helped with my confidence heaps because I know that boys can trust me and I trust all the boys, so it definitely helps.
Anthony, for a lot of the fan base that don't know you, this is your second year at the Wanderers. This has really been your breakout year. You had some performance appearances last year, but this is your breakout year. You started off at the Oakley Cannons at 17, and you were part of that fantastic Chris Taylor coach team for 3 years. You played over 50 games. But what's interesting, you played a lot of those games at left back. Do you think that type of transition has allowed you to develop as a player, that type of 3 years of grinding it out against men in another position?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped me because you get that senior experience from such a young age, especially playing as a left back. You're playing against, probably the best players in the NPL there. All the wingers there are quite good. So the experience I gained there has helped me kind of, all right, it's my first year, but I've been around men for years already. So I feel like I'm a man when I'm playing. I don't feel like a young kid that's kind of coming in and have to grind that out. I feel like I've had that experience, so it's made it a lot easier for me this year.
What's been the difference between last year and this year? Was it an adjustment factor, or was it Stadich giving you the keys to the central defence role and saying, I trust you?
I think the moment he came in, he kind of gave me the belief that I am capable of doing certain things, which I kind of lost last year. Coming from the NPL, I was, had a lot of confidence, knew what I was about, kind of lost that last year. So straight from the start, he gave me that belief, and then it's as soon as the coach gives you kind of the keys to do whatever you want, in a sense, it makes it so easy to play.
We were talking offline with Chubba, and Chubba as a young kid played with, came through the juniors at Makoni with Tale and Corica, and he was saying that how he was so pleased to see you a true defender, number one. Everyone wants to look pretty on the ball and do their hair while they're playing with the ball. But you epitomise, for me, an old-fashioned centre-back, and I say that respectfully because I think centre-backs have lost their art. You remind me of a young Sasha Ogonoski, a former Socceroo, that type of Craig Morse, Sasha Ogonoski, I take no prisoners, Kevin Muscat style even. But you've also got you've got a lot of ball-playing ability. You show glimpses of it with your distribution. Is that something you've restricted yourself to focus on the defending, or is that you pick and choose the moments to bring it into play?
I think it's definitely pick and choosing the moment. Obviously, different games and different scenarios. There's going to be long balls on, or there's going to be through balls or balls into the 10. But there's definitely times where those things aren't on. But I'd say definitely this year, especially the last, let's say 3-4 months, it's definitely been a focus of defending and not conceding chances and not conceding goals. And that's why you see, when I play, and if one of the teammates makes a defensive action or I make a defensive action, it's almost like a goal to me, and I couldn't be happier about just one defensive action. So I take massive pride in defending, and that's what's helped a lot.
You played right back, left centre back, right centre back. You play off both feet. What's your preferred position?
Go with what I'm playing now, probably right centre back. That's probably where I felt the most comfortable. Enjoy playing right and left back because you get the freedom to go forward. You get to express yourself in a different sort of way. But definitely at right centre back now.
You recently made the Australian under-23 team. Kudos to you. Congratulations. Aspirations for Socceroos and abroad, is that still part of the agenda like most youngsters?
Yeah, of course. I think it's something that's, I guess, slowly growing inside my head that, I might not be further away than what I thought a few months ago. But obviously I know that there's still so much to go and so much to improve on until I can get to the Socceroos. But obviously it's a dream to play for them. And as far as playing abroad goes, I think, it's always been my dream to go overseas and play football, do what I love. So let's see what happens.
Question for me. In a perfect world, where does Anthony Pendozopoulos see himself playing in the next 5-6 years?
I guess as a kid, it was always, I want to play football in England. That's what I was always saying to my parents.
Who do you support, Anthony?
That...
Who do you support in England?
Oh, you're not going to like this one.
United, you're going to tell me. I can tell.
We can tell.
I can tell. As soon as you said that.
Not if these days say, "Oh, you don't want me."
Yeah. Look, I'm not too proud of it at the moment, but I'll stick with it.
Stick solid.
Yeah.
Tony, Hayden Matthews got sold for like $2.5 million, and I think Anthony Pantazopoulos is right up there, and I think could even have a bigger career. Is that, definitely it's somewhere, with Anthony, could be looking at going overseas sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we have any. I've known Anthony for a long time, and Anthony needs to be commended, and he, I often smash him a lot. As you know, Chubb, I like smashing people sometimes when I think they're wrong, but he's shown tremendous leadership, tremendous courage to deal with the difficulties of a young man coming into a big club with big expectations, taking over from a foreign Korean. Let's not forget that. And then for Stagis to say, you know what, I trust you. It takes a lot of balls. And I have complete faith that if Anthony, I wouldn't be disappointed if he's here for another year to get to 50, 60 games, to really solidify his standing, and God forbid, maybe even a national team selection, because someone that can play right back, left back, and we're lacking in right and left back, he can make it. But I honestly believe that Anthony's an English, Belgium, hardcore central defender with the ball skill set to play. So, yeah, I think, and look, I'm biased, but I think he's better than Hayden Matthews.
Just one last question from me, just quickly. Looking forward to this game with Melbourne Victory. Always with Melbourne Victory Wanderers, it's it's an incredible game, and to get it in an elimination semi-final, CommBank couldn't ask for something bigger. Just on the team, the last few weeks, it's really clicked for you guys. I mean, it was a little bit up and down, but in the last few weeks, you've really emerged, and probably for me, coming into this competition, if not with Auckland, the form team going into this playoff series.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I think the main focus that was kind of halfway through the season was, yeah, right, we can score 3-4 goals a game, but we're conceding quite a lot. And once we got that whole collective to buy into that defensive work, we started conceding less, and we start winning games 1-0 or 2-1, drawing games 1-1. So I think that's been a massive difference for us, because at the start of the year, we lose to Adelaide 4-3, or we lose to Sydney FC 4-2.
Great for fans, but not for coaches.
Say it again?
Great for fans, those 4-3, but not for coaches.
Yeah, of course. For the neutral, I'm sure it's a great watch.
Yeah.
But when you're playing or your coaches or your Wanderers fans, it's not what you want. But for this game on Saturday, it's a mouth-watering clash, to be honest. You've got two teams that are filled with quality all over the park. And we've had two fantastic games already this year, so who knows what's going to come this week.
Anthony, I just want to ask you and Bonatic, is that relationship growing over time, or do you think you guys, that partnership was just one of those organic ones that just click out of nowhere?
I think it's definitely grown over time. I think obviously he's played a little bit more, and he kind of had, there was chopping and changing from centre back to centre back to centre back, and any team in the world that keeps swapping your centre backs, it's never really going to work. And as soon as we kind of got that 5-6 games together, we understand each other to a different level now. I know where he's going to be, he knows where I'm going to be, and that only helps each other and the whole team. So that relationship has grown so strong over especially the last, I'd say, month and a half.
Anthony, can I just chime in with something just quickly? Sorry, Tone, while we're on that subject, but how important is it having someone like Lawrence Thomas in goals behind you there? A very, very experienced goalkeeper, and he's had a fantastic season as well. I think everyone will agree.
Yeah, he's amazing. From the start of each week to game day, he's behind us. He's given us all the information that we could possibly ask for. And even in moments, whether it's in training or in games, and something's not going quite right, it's always positive communication, which obviously me and Bonatic are both young players, so maybe sometimes we'd prefer a little bit of a positive conversation. Obviously sometimes you need a little bit of kick up your backside, but most of the time it's all constructive, and the things he's saying are really meaningful. But as far as games goes, he's yapping in my ear all game, and it helps so much.
I know that you're also yapping, and that's a good thing. Like centre back, for one, and again with limited experience, 25 odd games, is that a natural instinct, or is that something that's been encouraged by Stadic?
I think I've definitely had it since I was a little kid. I was always really vocal on the pitch, and it kind of, like I was saying earlier on about lost that belief kind of thing last year. I kind of lost the leadership skills that I had. And I guess at the start of this
preseason, don't feel too bad. Most people lose belief with Mark Garudin or Mark Garudin or Mark, whatever his name is. Don't feel too bad about that, mate.
No, but as soon as preseason started, I kind of said to Staj that was one of my main strengths, the leadership, the communication, and he just was able to bring that out of me really quickly. And then I think the further the season's gone on, the more of a leader I feel, and then it helps the team.
Before we let you go, last question. This week's game, big club, Melbourne Victory, at home, big crowd. Does the team stick to the same principles, or do you think Staj might have a twist in the tactics and playing style?
I don't think we've changed for anyone this year. We back what we can do and how we can play, and we've shown that we can pretty much beat anyone in the league when we do that. There'll be tactical adjustments with how they play or how we might want to play out, but the majority of what we do will probably remain the same.
Yeah, can I just ask one last
Yeah.
question? Tony, sorry. Well, Tony touched on it before, but you do look very, very calm on the field, and you're like an old head on young shoulders, and you seem quite mature. But I've got to ask you about the shirt tucked in. Is that is that an omen or something, mate? Because it definitely puts you on another level with that shirt tucked in.
Yeah, I don't know. I did it as a youngster quite a lot. And then it kind of just started to go away. I was doing it at Oakley a little bit. And then at the start of this season, I was like, you know what? Like, let's go back to what I was doing when I was 12 years old. And I love the look. I love...
Works, yeah, good on you.
It kind of gives the old school vibe, which I'm all about.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, mate, we wish you all the very best. Long may this form continue, and if it does, I'm fairly confident the national team and overseas opportunities will arise in time. We love your passion, and we love the fact that you're politically incorrect in your conduct, and we for one love it, and I know the boys love it. So long may it continue, and wish you all the best for the remaining period of the finals.
Perfect. Thank you guys for having me on.
Good luck, Anthony.
Good luck, Anthony.
Thank you. See you guys.
Yeah, well, here's one of the stories coming out of the Western Sydney Wanderers. Definitely this year, one of the players, like you said, he was there with Mark Rudin, really wasn't getting any chance, and he's come on leaps and bounds. And like you said, Tony, he's now put himself in line for that Tony Popovic call-up.
It's an interesting story about Anthony Pendozopoulos. There was FIFA often distributes or sends out technical directors to come and undertake coaching courses, and one of these Croatian TDs came out and did some courses at Melbourne City and Western Sydney Wanderers last year, and obviously attended multiple training sessions. And one of the comments that were made to the then coaching staff was, "Oh, obviously this Anthony guy is your starting and best centre back." And they said, "Oh, no, he's not even in the lineup." So that's a fine line and sort of an insight on how coaches can kill careers.
So, and how many more? And I know you're probably more familiar than the rest of us, but how many more of these jewels like Anthony Pendozopoulos are running around at NPL level that these clubs haven't even really discovered, or coaches haven't really put an effort into? Look at.
I won't speak for others, but I'll speak for my stable. Just in the last 2 years, Clayton Taylor kicked out of Sydney FC, NYL. Lachlan Bayless not wanted by any club. He's going to go on to representing New Zealand at the Olympic Games and likely to go to the World Cup. Benny Gibson, top scorer in the NPL, 4 goals, 5 assists in his first year in Newcastle. Anthony Pendozopoulos, not wanted by anyone. Wasn't wanted by Rudin last year. Keely Adamson, unwanted by Sydney FC. Breakout season. Nathan Paul, an under 23 international left-footed centre-back, unwanted by Sydney FC. And that's just off the top of my head in the last 2 seasons alone. So the pathways were blocked, Andy. So what's happening now is coaches are able, just like the old NSL, they're able to, because there's 13 clubs and there's an NYL that primarily plays in the senior NPL competition of that state, you're able to see these youngsters against men. So other teams or their own clubs are able to say, "Oh, okay, he's playing against men. Okay, it might be a lesser league, but we can see." That's why, I mean, the last time I saw so many 17, 18, 19 and 20-year-olds play was the old NSL.
Correct.
Yeah.
And long may it continue. I mean, Chubba will come back to this. The old NSL in the old days, it seldomly was the top scorer a foreigner. There's always John Cosmino, Marshall Soap,
Pablo Cardozo, Alto Milicic,
Arnold Jim. So this year we've got Segasic and Goodwin and Botti, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 goals. So that is through opportunity. And the same with Pendozopoulos. Like, I look at the Korean that they probably paid $300,000 to bring, and I look at Pendozopoulos and, well, I'll ask you, who do you take?
I think there's no question, mate, in that. There's only one answer. That's absolutely for sure.
And credit has to be given to a lot of the clubs who made those decisions, financially, pushed, but the Adelaides and the Central Coast used to do it properly. I mean, you look at Lucas Harrington; he's been sold for 800,000. 17-year-old Aurelio Piol, not 493 minutes, sold for 800,000 to 700,000. And there's going to be others. So the talent's there. It's about creating the right pathways, the right narratives, and the kids will come, and our national teams will strengthen. Hence why under 20s, won the Asian Cup.
Yeah.
There's some real exciting prospects.
Tone, just some any other updates on any other A-League news? We know Brisbane Roar, there are a lot of reports now that Zakovic has finally been told that he is not going to be re-signing. Any update on what you're hearing? We knew that Carl Beer, maybe the Robbie Stanton were in the mix, maybe a few others. You hearing anything up there for Brisbane?
Well, you reported, I should say, that Valkanis was the leading candidate there. That's what I'm hearing. They're trying to restructure, obviously. Ruben, the great Zakovic, some pot shots at his mate, Don Johnson Anderson. And obviously there's a split there. I think Zakovic had to go. Who they put in an under-resourced club, good luck. It's a bit like what's happening in Newcastle. Bringing in an inexperienced coach that hasn't thing is going to be a challenge for them as well. There's some questions to be answered.
Mm-hmm. And I believe Nick Stavroulakis as well, the assistant of Melbourne Victory, he's joining up there with Newcastle at the end of the season as well, so he's moving there too. That's pretty much our A-League wrap. But like we said, I'm really looking forward to these big games on Friday night and Saturday, boys. And I've been looking forward to this elimination round because I think we've got some big teams in there. It's going to be some big crowds and, hopefully put the A-League again back on the map, especially starting with this huge one at Comback on Saturday night.
Definitely. Thank you, gents.
Stealth, thank you once again. I know you're a little bit under the weather, but you never let the shade down. You're a true player, mate. Sick and all, you've came up, and thank you once again for all your help. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Good evening.
Evening, buddy. Chubbs, I just got some of those W League results.
That's what I was going to tell you. Let's go through the W League and the semi-final. We got the semi-finals this week as well.
Yeah. Well, the first legs of the semi-finals were played over the weekend. We had Melbourne Victory 3-1 over Adelaide.
Yep.
And then in the other game, which was Melbourne City and Central Coast Mariners, that actually finished 2-2. So this weekend, we've got Melbourne Victory hosting Adelaide. As I mentioned, they've got a first leg.
That's on Saturday, 10th of May at 2:15 p.m. At the home of the Matildas.
And then the second leg on Sunday, 2:00. We've got Melbourne City at home to Central Coast Mariners, and that's the one that's got a lot of interest with that first leg finishing 2-2.
Who are you tipping? Yeah. Who do you think can take it out?
Oh, look, Chubbs. At this stage, you've got to go with both the Melbourne teams. They've been quite consistent throughout the season, and this home ground advantage now in the second league will be big. In any code, as you know, a local derby in a big game like a final is going to be huge. So the thought of Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City Women's both being in the A-League Women's Grand Final will be a big one. But you never know. Central Coast are definitely up there. I just don't know whether Adelaide could turn around that 3-1 deficit from the first league, but definitely Central Coast are in it up to their ears. So, but just a home ground advantage for Melbourne City might help for them.
Well, we're going to turn our attention, obviously, to the NPL. We're going to have two big names from the NPL. We're going to have George Timotheo on in a little while, also known for his great adventure when he headed off and played at Schalke at Germany. So we'll speak to George soon. He's also playing now at the Blacktown Spartans. And then we're also going to speak to Goran Djubic, who's been fantastic, doing a fantastic job at the SD Raiders, a club that you know as well quite well, Andy. They've been on the map, and they're on the verge of this year. They've started very well in our NPL1 competition, and they're one of the teams that could really be promoted into the NPL Premier League. And the Southern Districts Club, we know also with Nicky Carl there and Goran themselves, they've just done leaps and bounds and wonderful things in the last few years.
Yeah, Chubbs, the youth boys are absolutely killing it. Nikki's obviously doing a great job there. I've got another mate there, Aussie, who helps out in the coaching ranks and in the youth, and yeah, they're leaps and bounds, mate. It's at that stage now where I'm even hearing just through contacts that a lot of parents or boys that are at the club are sort of getting approached by your Sydney FCs and your Western Sydney Wanderers, but they're not actually jumping ship, Charles, which was, a lot of parents, dare I say, and this happens in the women's as well. They see clubs like Sydney FC and Wanderers come knocking, and they obviously, most of them end up jumping ship. There's a bit more lucrative offers there when you go to these bigger clubs in terms of registration fees. There's no registration fees involved, but yeah, a club like SD Raiders just maintains them because of how successful they are and how good their program is. And even in the women, my daughter was there a few years ago, but they're in the NPL2 comp in the women, youth that is. So yeah, they've always been a strong club, very very well run on and off the field, and mate, they're on the verge of breaking it in the men's. That's for sure this year.
Just had some news that broke my heart there that we will talk about in the EPL segment, but TAA Trent Alexander-Arnold finally releasing a statement that he is leaving, going to Real Madrid. Well, we knew that all along. It was always going to be Van Dijk and Salah staying. But that's a bit of a shock. We were hoping that with the winning of the Premier League could have changed his mind, but it looks after 30 years at the club, he is going to be gone. But we'll look at that in the EPL section. Do you want to bring up all the results for the NPL Premier League and NPL 1 results over the weekend? I mean, you can't skip our game, Dali. We had a shocker, but apart from that, yeah, you can say the results.
I was just going to say, I've got to read it. It's actually the first one on the list, but yeah, in New South Wales League 1, we had Northern Tigers. Top of the table, Northern Tigers, aren't they still, Chubbs?
Yeah, with SD Raiders.
SD, that's right. So they, unfortunately, 5-0 win over your Dulwich Hill. Bankstown City 2, Hakoah Sydney 3. Wanderers and Canterbury, Bankstown fought out a 0-0 draw. Bulls Academy 2, Rydalmere Lions 1. Hills United 1, drew with University of New South Wales. Inter Lions Macarthur Rams also drew. That was 0-0. And Newcastle Jets under 23s 1, and as you mentioned, SD Raiders 2. So that leaves the table, Northern Tigers and SD Raiders both on 28 points. Northern Tigers have got a better goal difference there. SD Raiders do have a game in hand, however. So, and then you've got third place, 6 points behind Bulls Academy on 22. Newcastle Jets 21, Inter Lions also on 21, University of New South Wales in 6th spot on 20. Then you've got the Spartans, Blacktown Spartans on 20. In 7th, Canterbury Bankstown on 8th, Rydalmere Lions in 18th spot in 9th, I should say. And then if we scroll down, Chubbs, your Dulwich Hill, 15 points, a 6-point buffer from Mount Keys Wanderers, who were in second last, 15th position, and Macarthur Rams are at the bottom on 8 points.
Yeah, the NPL1, this competition is very hard competition, but if you can get 2-3 wins, the competition is that close that you could definitely just veer up the table very quickly. But if you look at the results week in this competition, they're so topsy-turvy. That's why the Northern Tigers and SD Raiders have been excellent. They've just been the most consistent sides, with Inter Lions coming good now, Bulls, Newcastle Jets, but a lot of the other teams, it's been up and down. You have a good 2-3 week period, then you have a bad 2-3 week period. So a little bit of inconsistency from all teams because it's such a hard competition. It's very hard. You don't turn up, you're a little bit off on the day, you really get punished. So
what do we put down that result of the weekend? Obviously disappointing for yourself.
Well, you look at our game. I mean, we played. We've had 5 games in the last 2 weeks because we also played a midweek game to Rydalmere, which didn't help. And with what happens in this competition, when you have, I shouldn't use it the excuse because you don't want to, but you have injuries and suspensions like us. We've had ACLs and players breaking their ankles and kneecaps. And you can't replace them until round 30. I believe this is one thing. I believe in this competition. I even asked George, when you have so many players come out with so many injuries, I think with ending seasons injuries, you should be able to bring in a player a lot earlier than you have to wait until the last 10 rounds of the season. But then again, it does give opportunity to our younger 20-year-olds that we've been doing fielding in. So it works both ways. It's a great opportunity. It opens the door for some younger players to come through, and we've gave them an opportunity. And I mean, like I said, with Northern Tigers, we were 1-0 at half time, really, in the game. Probably had the better chances in the first half, but fatigue and a few other little bit of, unluck, and then fatigue really hit in. And, they're a good side. You can't give them any half chances or any goals because they'll punish you. And they did that. And, that's why they're first, and that's where we are. So, like I said, just being consistent. It's the consistency that, makes a difference in this league.
I think, like anything, you'll see probably in the second round when you sort of playing these teams again, then it'll start to level out and see where teams really are at. I mean, I noticed a big result for Macarthur Rams, which is where I'm sort of a little bit invested these days. My daughter is there in the women's youth space, but for them to get a 0-0 draw against an Inter-Lions team
who's been in great
at the table is massive. Yeah, correct. So just backing up what you said, I think on the day. A lot plays into it with who turns up and who doesn't, and anyone can beat anyone. But there's I think 12, 13 games in, still a long way to go. As you taught us, sort of heading to the second round now, and really interesting to see how it all plays out. Still a lot to play for, obviously, but yeah, at the moment with the 6-point gap there with Northern Tigers and SD Raiders to the third team Bulls Academy, it's a decent gap at this stage of the season, but interesting to see what happens.
All right, let's turn our attention. Well, we've got George on it. We'll say good evening first to this superstar, George Timotheo, who's a favourite of ours in social media world. TikTok, he's everywhere. Also plays for the Blacktown Spartans. He's on a lot of football shows because he's enjoyable to watch, and always love hearing what he has to say. Good evening, George.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Thanks for the warm welcome.
No, brilliant. What will we do before we'll look into your career, and we want to get to know, we'll get you part of this as well. Let's get the New South Wales Premier League results up, and we'll get your thoughts as well on how you think the NPL has been going so far. Andy, what were the results over the weekend?
Yeah, Chubbs, Marconi kept on kicking on. A big 3-0 win away from home against Manly United. Sutherland Sharks 0, Apia 2. Northwest Spirit, I should say, bounced back to form with a 1-0 win over Wollongong Wolves. St George City 3, Central Coast Mariners 2. Blacktown City, a big win here, 4-0 away at Western Sydney Wanderers in a bit of a local derby, if you like. And then we had Rockdale, another massive win against your Sydney Olympic Chubbs. I think there's going to be a bit to say about that. Quite a bit of pressure now coming on onto Sydney Olympic and Labby Halidi. 4-0 that game ended. And we also had yesterday Sydney United bouncing back with a 2-0 win over Mount Druitt.
Yeah, so the table, I'll just quickly look at it. Marconi's still first, running hot on 33 points. Second, Rockdale, 27, equal with Blacktown City now on 27 points. Spirit on fourth on 25 points. Apia fifth on 23 points. Manly round out that top six on 18 points. Just outside of that, you've got Wollongong and St George City on 17. Olympic on 16. St George City on 15. Sydney FC Youth on 15. Sutherland on 11. Mount Druitt on 8 points. And Western Sydney Wanderers Youth on 8 points, and Central Coast Youth are on 5 points. Georgie, it's always good to get your views because you've played in this league for a very long time as well, and you were, one of the biggest stars at Sydney Olympic before moving on for various reasons. But Andy's right, that result against Rockdale hasn't sat down well with the supporters already. I can see supporters have been going off, and for such a great club like Sydney Olympic, the inconsistency is there, and I was talking about even in our league, it's so hard, this competition. It's the inconsistency that kills a lot of teams.
Yeah, definitely. I tuned into most of the live stream on the day, and obviously rewatched the highlights and stuff. And to be honest, they were quite poor goals that they conceded. Like, obviously Euro scores like a really nice goal, but I think a few of the others were just very poor defending. And like you said, the inconsistency is a massive thing. Like, I even look at like my time when I was there last year. To be honest, even after I left, I reflected and I said, okay, we never really got smashed by a team, right? So like losing 4-0 to Rockdale, like you consider that a smashing. And we had never lost by more than one goal, So anything more than that, it was always quite tight when we were losing. So I guess that's a bit of a consolation, but like you said, there's probably definitely pressure on Labby right now and the club in general. I know I heard there was some sanctions as well. They were going to be docked points.
Yeah.
So that's obviously like probably playing on the players' minds. Like, I still stay in contact with a fair few of the boys. But yeah, I think the vibe is quite low in the camp right now.
Is that what you put it down to, George? I mean, is there something in particular that they're? I mean, because as you said, the goals they conceded were really, really poor and not really what we expect from Sydney Olympic. You know, at this standard of football, you can say the second top competition in the country. I mean, in New South Wales, that is. But is there anything else that you think that's it's sort of maybe off-field factors that possibly are playing a part here?
Yeah, there's probably a fair few factors. Like I won't go into too much detail on like the reasons why I ended up leaving Olympic last year. But there are certain things that go in the background. Obviously at these bigger clubs that probably yeah, it doesn't look as bad from the outside, but then when you delve in, it's like, yeah, wow, like the situation's a lot worse than what I guess you first encounter. But I think you guys touched on the consistency. It's just like I've watched some of the games and I've watched some of the games they've played and the results, and they've played some decent football. But then speaking to, some of the players, it's just like I think they lack a style of play. And to be honest with you, like even last year when I was there, we relied a lot on like individual brilliance and those moments where we're scoring, like Roy O'Donovan saving us in the 94th minute with a header to beat Wollongong 4-3. Like just crazy games like that. And I feel like what I said before, when we weren't losing by more than one, but then also at the same time, like we weren't winning the games that we should have. With the squad that we had on paper last year was absolutely insane. So I think I think this year I spoke about it on another podcast, and I just said that I I feel like last year there was a good mix of like experience and youth, whereas this year I think the youth has taken a bit too much. And like whether or not like they're trying to go too professional too early. Like I know we have the Australian Championship like coming towards the end of the year, but when you hear from some of the players that they're training like 3 mornings in a week,
Well,
like
that's what I was
that's
going to say.
insane.
That's where fans get disappointed because they know that Labi Halidi came on here saying they do 4 sessions a week in the morning plus the afternoon. So they're
Yeah, that's
training
right.
pretty much a lot more than NPL teams. And then when you see them conceding goals like they had on the weekend, you wonder, well, what training sessions are they really? It just
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
show.
Hey,
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're training like on a Monday night, following it up with a gym session, you're having a Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Friday morning session. Like that's almost like you're almost looking at like an A-League setup at that point. You
Correct.
know what I mean? Like that's quite a lot of training. Like it's not uncommon to have like a day off in the middle of the week or something like that. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but obviously those other factors, whether it's financial or maybe the sanctions have played a part on the players' minds and whatnot. Maybe they've just hit a little slump. Who knows? Like these things also happen in football. I think it can be magnified for Olympic, but then you even look at a Sydney United, and it's like their team on paper should be winning every single game as well, and they're probably not doing as good as what they should
Yeah,
be.
I've seen you tips I've seen that you spoke in another podcast that you were tipping Sydney United. I was thinking like you, I thought they'll have a big season. A team that's really coming up a little bit consistent now is Blacktown City. Again, you're seeing again now the top 3 teams again that were in that battle again last year. Your Marconi rocked out Blacktown City. Are you surprised, George, how good Marconi's been? Because sometimes after winning a championship, a few players leaving and so on, there could be a little bit of a dull. But Checker's done really well to keep that team just ticking over.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because I think it's just like we said, that's a culture that has been created for many, many, many years, if not decades, right? So it's
Correct.
like you have your core foundation of players, and I think they've done really well in the off season with their signings. Like obviously, Truey and Lockie Griffiths like come over. Like I
Top
think they're two
signings.
fantastic
Yeah.
signings, and like we played them in preseason and we gave them, a pretty good match. But I think that Seka's been in the game long enough, and to be honest, like even on the weekend, I think Anton didn't even play,
No.
and Windhurst came in and they still kept a clean sheet and they look solid as. So I think it's just the depth that they have, and that's built obviously like on the professionalism. Look at their training facilities. I guess the standard in which they probably hold themselves to is a massive factor, and Seka obviously holds them to it. That probably some of the other clubs maybe need to
Yeah.
start, I guess, taking notes because, like, I don't know what the record is, but what is it? They're still undefeated, aren't they? They
Yeah,
haven't lost.
they haven't lost, no. I mean,
Yes.
even Andy Rockdale too. They started the season, a little bit. They lost Bayon Tenil to St George. Started a little bit slow, but they really hit in their straps the last few weeks.
Oh.
Poor D's got them ticking over now, and they're coming good too. And Ura's a big factor. I mean, Ura
Yeah.
Seskia, he's just incredible how he can just continue week in, week out. George, let's turn our attention to yourself. I wanted to bring you on because you're doing a lot of good things with the academies and with the youth setups that you're trying to do yourself, and we'll get into that a little bit. But just going back to a little bit of your career, I know you really made the news when you played at Schalke, Germany. You played here in the A-League for Sydney FC. Of course, you had some time with Adelaide United and Melbourne Victory as well. But the big story with Schalke, and I love hearing the story how you got called up because you actually were travelling and you were away and you had to make a last-minute dash when you finally got a call up. Just for our listeners here on Trouble TV, can you tell us a little bit of the story with Schalke?
Do you want me to go back to like before I left, or do you want to?
Whatever, yep.
Whole thing, mate. The whole thing. Yeah.
Give us the whole file.
Yeah, so I've told this story so many times. I've probably gotten good at making a long story short, but yeah, it's no secret that obviously Sydney Olympic and Schalke had the partnership pathway. So I was essentially scouted almost a year and a half before I went to Germany by the coach that was here, Karim, and he basically took me under his wing, trained me one-on-one, free of charge for nearly a year and a half. On every day off, every spare minute that I had, I was training with him. And obviously it helped that I was finding some really consistent form, like in an MPL setting. So I'd come back from Sydney FC where, I'm playing MPL 2. Oh, sorry, actually, no, we're playing MPL 1. But I wasn't getting that chance to, I guess, step up and test myself with the A-League boys. But at that time, there's Alex Wilkinson, Geordie Boyce, all these kind of big name centre backs and like older boys that, the young ones just weren't getting a look in. It's not like how it is today where, unfortunately for us back then, but fortunately for the boys now, they're getting, not handouts, but they're essentially getting their debuts and playing consistent games like much more than, what was given back then. Whether it's fair or not is a different story. But yeah, I obviously took the step back from, I had an extra year contract at Sydney FC with Graham Arnold, and I chose to basically leave it and throw it away and just say, hey, I want to take the step back and play MPL. I just want to play consistently and see what I can do. Obviously, I only knew that I had a few options at the time. Like I obviously touched on it the other week with, the Champagne Football Boys. But not many people actually know the story. But yeah, I had the offer from Celtic at the time as well before I signed at Sydney FC. But due to work permit and stuff like that, I chose to actually probably take the safer option and sign at Sydney. I think everything happens for a reason. But yeah, I played very consistent with Sydney Olympic. And then, basically, it wasn't until probably a month before I actually left for Germany in July of 2018 that I knew that I was going to Schalke. So it was always the plan in that summer, the European summer window, to go to Europe, but it wasn't decided where. And it was just a funny coincidence that the under-23 centre-back had gotten injured towards the end of the season, and they were looking at potentially bringing like a few trialists in and bringing myself in. So I ended up, going over there, and within 3 days I had signed the contract. So I originally was supposed to go under 23s for a 2-week trial. But literally 3 days in I had signed. They were convinced what they saw in 3 days was enough to sign me up. So that was, I guess, the start of the under 23s journey. And I think they liked me because I offered something different to like a typical German centre back. So obviously I'm very renowned for my passing. And it was just, like I said, it's a value that really added to their philosophy and their team at the time and gave a different dynamic to what I guess the typical German centre back, like I said, offers.
Were you away on holiday when you first got your call up, or you were traveling somewhere away?
So basically we played the league leaders. I think it was like 6 rounds in, and I actually scored the winner. So we ended up going first. We won 2-1, and the coach basically after the game gave us a few days off and said, "Hey, like you guys have deserved this, like top of the table. Like it's very rare that we got like a little like break,
This
and
was
we
in
had
the
been going."
23s competition.
Yeah, this was in the 23s competition. And we had a few days off, and obviously after the game, so Gerald Asamoah was our, I guess, manager slash technical director, whatever. But if you guys don't know, or people don't know who Gerald Asamoah is, you can just Google him. And yeah, he's a massive figure, obviously, in Germany and German football, and especially with Schalke. And yeah, so we had gotten a few days off, blah, blah, blah. He gave me the biggest hug after the game. Like he was so happy. And obviously, he basically, gave me the heads up that the first team were watching the game. So it was like obviously very good for them to see. And like we talk about the value that I had scored at the end and got the winner and whatever. So yeah, this is where the story gets interesting. So my wife now, she was with me at the time. In Germany, we decided, hey, let's go away for a few days. Like we never get time like this. Let's head off. So we headed off to Amsterdam. We really like visiting Amsterdam. It was only 2.5 hour drive from where we were in Germany. So heading to Amsterdam, checked into the hotel. We're like, sweet, like planned all these things, Anne Frank house, go to these museums, go do this, all this touristy stuff. Like first time in Europe, it was unbelievable. Anyway, I left my phone in the hotel just to leave it on charge. Took my wife's phone, went out on a night. Come back a few hours later, check my phone as you do, like when you come to the hotel, and I saw like 17 missed calls from Gerald Asamoah. And I'm like, I said to my wife, what's going on? I said, this can't be good. I said, and I started freaking out because I'm like, man, I have to be in trouble or something. Like something's happened. Like maybe they found out I'm in Amsterdam. Like I was literally shooting bricks.
Worried.
And I ring him back straight away and he goes, George, where are you? And I was reluctant to say like where I was. And I said, oh, like Jerry, I'm in Amsterdam with my partner. And he goes, what? What are you doing there? And he's like, I was like, we have a few days off. Is it all right? Like, am I here? Like, am I okay to be here? And he's like, oh, yeah, but you need to come back now. I said, what? I said, why? I said, we just booked hotel for 3 days. I said, we got all this stuff planned. What do you mean I need to come back? What for? And he goes, George. And he looked at me like stern. And he goes, you're training. So in Germany, they say profis. So that's the professional. He goes, you're training with the profis in the morning. I said, and this, mind you, this is like 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Oh.
And I was like, are you serious? And I was obviously ecstatic, like I was over the moon. Anyway, I'm like scrambling. And he's like, I'll see you in the morning. Like just hung up just like that. I was like, see you in the morning. I look at my wife, I was like, what do I do? And she goes, well, you have to go. Like, I was like, are you going to come back with me or are you going to stay? So I ended up basically leaving my wife in Amsterdam to do all the touristy stuff. Jumped in my car, got on the Autobahn, zoomed back to Germany, got a few hours of sleep, woke up, went to training. And it was funny because like 6 weeks prior, we had started the season, I was the newbie. I was like the outsider of the whole group, especially in the 23s. And I was the first one that was ever invited to train with the professionals that season. So yeah, that's my little funny story on, I guess, how I got my first call up to training, yeah.
And then you made your debut, didn't you, with who was it, against Hamburg, was it? No.
I was Stuttgart.
Sorry.
Stuttgart. So another similar story. Basically all week we had okay, so let's fast forward 9 months. So from basically where we were, we fast forward 9 months, and I had been on the bench a few times with the first team. I ended up full time with them. So I had Domenico Tedesco, who was the head coach at the time, who really believed in me and brought me in. And then Hub Stevens took over. So Domenico, they parted ways with him. And then Hub Stevens, who's Dutch and German coaching playing legend, took over. And he was like my biggest advocate. He loved me. Like I was his star boy, I guess. And yeah, so I was training with them full time, still playing under 23s, but I was basically, essentially at the time, I was the first team player. by all accounts. So I was on the bench, like I said, for a few weeks before I'd actually made my debut. So I was sitting on the bench against Frankfurt, the derby against Dortmund. I sat on the bench against Bayer Leverkusen with the likes of Kai Havertz and Julian Brandt, Florian Wirtz, all these kind of guys. And yeah, so basically we stayed in a hotel the night before the game, and it wasn't until the morning of that we went for our team walk, and the coach has basically put his arm around me and said, like, son, you're starting tonight. And it was just like, yeah, a range of emotion just flood through you. And obviously, yeah, all your life's work, I guess, leads up to that moment. And people ask me, like, obviously you were nervous, blah blah blah, and I said, it's funny, I was so nervous until I stepped onto that pitch for the warm up. As soon as I was on the pitch for the warm up, I like literally could not. I was not nervous, and I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't hear a thing. Couldn't hear a thing. So yeah, I guess that's my long story short summed up of
That's
yeah,
great.
timing.
Let's
Sorry,
fast
mate.
forward to your career now. Obviously, you're doing well. You're playing with the Blacktown Spartans. I know our competition a little bit started off inconsistency, but really started winning games again and moving up on that ladder. But before I speak about that quickly, you're doing a lot of good things with your academy. Can you tell everyone what's been happening? Because I've heard a lot of good things about your academy and so on, and you know what you're striving to help players in the future.
Yeah. Well, essentially, yeah, I started coaching pretty much when I came back to Sydney. After my time in the A League, I was working with Pej Bowic in his warehouse in Seven Hills. And I think I found my love for coaching, and just helping the young players, I guess, elevate their games in ways that I guess is not typical or not boring, but is just that those one percenters that um, I guess I didn't get when I was their age. So I worked there for just over 6 months, and then I guess Page made the decision to leave the warehouse and do his own kind of thing. And I was contemplating, okay, what do I do now? Like, do I do my own thing? Do I just stick to my full-time job? Do I just try and get back to professional football? I was tossing up a lot of things, and it wasn't until probably another couple months where I was like, you know what? I love this so much that I want to create essentially a brand under my name and help younger players, um, I guess, bridge the gap between what semi-professional and professional looks like. Not just through, you know, football, but through mentoring, through their mindset and all that kind of stuff. So I think that I created the academy um, for very specialized one-on-one training or small group sessions. Um, Hopefully, it grows beyond that, but I think at the minute it's like I have a pretty much a core group of about 50 or 60 players right now, which is crazy to think that I only had, you know, 4 or 5 just under 2 years ago. So we're expanding quite nicely, but I think my experiences in Europe and my experiences in the A League and um, leaving home at a young age and all these kind of things, all my experiences can be used for the younger generation because, like I said, I didn't have academies when I was growing up. Like
No.
my parents did everything they could for me. The best thing I had when I was their age was Curva coaching, and I try and incorporate my learnings from Curva coaching into my sessions too, because essentially the ball mastery and the skills that I learn in Curva coaching, I always try and focus on, even if it's for a small period of my sessions. But I think it goes beyond that because the space that I'm in right now, I'm very privileged because, like I said, it's very specialized one-on-one training. So I get to go out and watch the players, right? I get to go and watch their games. So then I tailor their one-on-one sessions um, as focused as possible because I don't just create a session off the cuff. It goes off their position. It goes off what they need to work on, whether it's their weak foot, whether it's their long balls, whether it's the defending, whether it's this or that. So it's very specialized at the minute, which is excellent. I'm forming really good partnerships. Obviously, I still stayed in contact with the people at Schalke, so hopefully I can get a trip over to Germany next year, which is in the works. But I'm planning to take a group of players to Spain later in the year, to Atletico Madrid, which will be a massive thing for 15 to 20 kids to open their eyes, I guess, to what life is like in Europe and what European football looks like, and to live and breathe it. Hopefully, it ignites the fire in them. But at the end of
And
the day,
whereabouts are you based, George, or where can people find to get a hold of you? Are you on social
yeah.
media?
So I'm on all social media. GT Football. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Website's getting done as we speak, which is good. But yeah, I'm based in Blacktown, but obviously I have a fair few clients. Like I go as far as Manly. I have sessions in Penrith.
Okay.
So kind of like I'm like GT Football, but I'm mobile. Um, it's just difficult, obviously, because a lot of the kids that come to me are part of other teams or academies already. But I guess they come to me for their specialized sessions, which I'm fortunate enough for. But at the end of the day, hopefully the academy and the business grows large enough where hopefully I can eventually affiliate with a club where I can look after their, juniors and their SAP kids, so that in that age group is the best. They're like sponges. They absorb so much information in that time, before they start playing basically on the full field, and they have their set positions and whatnot. So yeah, like I said, I'm doing that. I'm doing that trip for those boys and girls to open their eyes and hopefully create a pathway where, I guess, like I said, we didn't have as kids. A lot of these players didn't have as kids, and yeah, just offer something different, I guess, than your typical, I guess, academies. Yeah.
Thank you for
No,
your
what-
time today, George. It was brilliant. We're going to continue
Great,
as it was a great insight, and we wish you all the best. Especially, like I said, they can find you on all the websites with GT Football, and I suggest that all the kids to get on there and look you up. And if you're a great story and a great pathway for Australian football, really appreciate it. And thank you for your time again tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, George.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Appreciate it. Bye. Andy, we're going to go to another man here in Goran Lubajar, who's had a he's had a great, he's having a great season with the Raiders. But Goran, just one thing, you're muted. Your microphone is muted. We can't hear you. We just need you to fix your microphone. Turn it on. While he's doing,
I think he's looking for it.
I think if you
As,
click that,
Anthony,
there's I think where the video icon is, you should be able to also click onto your little microphone. While he's doing that,
somewhere in the stands there at Ernie Smith, I think.
should have a little microphone icon. I think you can just click on it. But anyway, Andy, while Goran's
Sorry? The
while Goran's
laptop. I don't know where it is on the phone, eh? But I think you might have to, Goran, if you can hear, you might have to log out and log back in maybe, and then there should be the icon comes up, I think, when you log back in. So maybe try that, buddy.
Well, Goran's, let Goran try and do that. But we had George Dimethil. He's had a very interesting career, and like from Sydney Olympic going straight to Schalke and so on. It's brilliant, and that's this is the time. Like, here's a story. He like at Sydney Olympic from an NPL club. Sometimes players that everyone wants to be in the A League, but you sometimes can do it from an NPL club.
Oh, absolutely, Charles. But I think that pathway that Sydney Olympic had created was obviously massive for George and for the opportunities. But yeah, he's always had. I remember back in the day, always had big raps on him. He obviously could play. He was a great talent. I didn't get around to ask him about his exit there from Schalke, because I know he recently posted something about along the lines of listening to the wrong people. Which is a lesson in itself for a lot of younger players. It would have been good to get his insight on that, but Yeah, it was definitely great to get an insight. And the fans are being called up. You think you're on a holiday for 3 days and you get called up that you're going to be training with the first team the next morning and you've got to drive back. It's everyone's dream, obviously playing at that level to have that opportunity.
And it's probably
Um,
one league where we haven't had as many. Well, we've had a few, but not as many Aussie players that we've probably liked. I mean, we get a lot
I
going
think,
through the Premier League and Belgium and all
yeah,
that.
massive league.
I,
Yeah.
Massive.
I think it's working out, boys.
That's
Oh,
it,
we can
mate.
hear you,
Got you.
Goran. Perfect, mate.
Hey, let me tell you, I can do lawyering, I can do football, can't do technology. That's for
Oh,
sure.
mate, we're all the same here. You should have
Awesome,
seen.
buddy.
I don't know even how I got this show together. Don't even ask, Goran.
Jesus Christ, I have to get to like 16 settings to just click a button to allow me to talk.
Yeah, don't worry, we've still got spelling mistakes. Everything here, it's all good, buddy.
Wow.
Goran, we wanted to
How-
speak to you because, mate, since you've been appointed at the SD Raiders with when Nicky Carl back appointed you back in 2022, you also were a player at SD Raiders as well, and you've done a terrific job in the last 6 years. But I think this year's really been the season where it's really kicked in, and you're up there, league leaders with the Northern Tigers. Just a bit of noise in the background, but that's all right. We can-
Yeah, I can maybe try and move to I'm still at training. I can try and move to a different corner where it's less noisy, I guess.
Yeah,
Would that
it's
help?
all right. Yeah, it's just coming through.
If you can hear us, all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so like I was saying, you're having a terrific season this year with the boys and the SD Raiders, and one of the teams that is noted maybe getting a promotion at the end of the season to Premier League. But SD Raiders has done a wonderful job. You, Nicky Carl, is that finally after this is the season where everything's sort of gelling together, all the good work you've done over the years, you can finally start seeing things happening?
Look, mate, the funny thing is that so many people message me and text me like this year going, what's the secret? What's the secret sauce? How come this, things are finally going good? What have you done differently? Honestly, I've done nothing. I've done nothing differently. Like it's been the same the last 3 years since I took over, really. I guess the first few years has been tough because I didn't have the run in preseason that I had this year. Every year it seems like we had just a lot of injuries, a lot of guys out. The first 2 years, I think I played trialists to the last game of preseason, like 4 or 5, just to get through the friendly matches and then sort of bring blokes in and go from there. But this year, from the start, I guess I had the whole group do the preseason. We could work on tactical stuff. We can look at, exploring different formation. Perhaps that's one thing we changed. We've got 2 ways of playing now. And people just, re-emphasized everything that kind of been working on. And yeah, so far it's been working. But in terms of changing anything major, no, it's been same old boring Goran, I guess.
Well, I suppose the one thing that has changed, you have to say, is consistency, because this competition's all about consistency. You see a lot of teams, we might have a good block of 3-4 games and go off for 3-4 games and come good again. But the big difference, you guys, the Northern Tigers, even so maybe now Bulls, Newcastle a little bit, but you guys and Northern Tigers, it's really that consistency week in, week out. And even some of your games, you've turned results where you're down 1-0 and been able to turn those results. That's a sign of a good championship team that can do that.
Yeah, I think we kind of, as a group, we made a promise to ourselves that this year, regardless whether, some games the football is just not there, right? Like you're playing on grass, you're playing synthetic, the conditions are tough, and sometimes we're not playing well. But we just sort of promised ourselves that we weren't going to stop running till the 97th minute. We're going to work hard. We're going to try and stay in the game, never lose faith. And like you said, we've been in games. I think now 6 or 7, we're down by 1 with 10 minutes to go, and then we'll get a result because we just don't give up, right? We don't give up. So that's been a massive change, I guess, culturally also as a group. So
has that ever been discussed with Nicky Carl, yourself as a club? Is that where you are now trying to achieve to get into that into the Premier League, get promoted?
Look, I guess it would be nice, given that we're trying to finish our new facility. We're still halfway through. Like we got the synthetic, but we're working on a clubhouse. So there's a lot of financial challenges in terms of what to prioritize, and obviously getting the facility ready for the associations for the club is the main thing, which means there's obviously budgetary constraints and things like that. if we could do it with the current squad and the sort of what we had in mind in terms of budget and stuff, it will be unreal. Honestly, wouldn't go out and spend lots of money. And if you guys look at my squad, it's hardly changed from the last 2 years. I've kept the same young team, couple of added a year or two on, which gives them some more experience. But in terms of bringing big name players and spending cash, we haven't done that. I guess we always believed we had good enough program and good enough players around. It's just getting them on the park all at the same time. We had challenges before, which touch wood, and I'll go do this because it's probably harder than you would. It's been going okay, so yeah.
Andy?
Yeah, Goran, we had Manny Spanadakis on from St. George City, the NPL team, last Monday night actually, and we spoke about. I've got friends in the youth space there, and spoke about the importance of having a strong club and the backing of Aitek Gench, which is what he's got there. You've obviously got someone similar there in Nicky Carlin. I know Nicky from the youth space as well. I've got friends with their boys there in the youth space, and how important is having someone like Nicky there and his experience and the youth travelling as well as they are. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the show that a lot of the boys I know in the youth space get approached by your Sydney FCs and your Wanderers and all that, but they actually choose to stay at SD Raiders.
Yeah, well, mate, let's be honest. People knew Goran as a player. People didn't know Goran as a coach. To get a first grade gig straight after retiring as a footballer, no one would have given me a chance, right? Nick had faith in me because I guess he saw the work I did under 8 SAP when I first started playing for Nick, and then 18s, 20s, and then he just said to me, you know what, you have the same sort of football philosophy, you know what the club's about, you grew up in Liverpool since you came here as a refugee at 13 years old, you breathe the West, you love to fight the right person for the job, and I also believe in promoting youth and local talent, and we kind of aligned on that, and he's given me faith in the first year when he wasn't good because he was down at sessions and seeing me work and seeing the time I'm putting in. So he was patient enough with me and letting me do my own thing and growing and exploring and making mistakes and learning on my own, so I had all the freedom, and he kind of keeps the club informed, and they give me also time, the directors, the board, and it's all thanks to him, right? But the most pleasing thing in this journey that we had together is, like, we played Wollongong last round of FA Cup. In that team against the Wolves, we had 9 players in the starting team that come from our youth. Right. Some are still in youth, so 7 of them still play 20s and 18s, right? So because we give people the chance, and because young guys are getting a go, they decide to stay to get a chance at first grade football instead of going to academies. If we didn't do that, there's no way to keep some of these players. Like, it's not possible.
Wow.
Goran, looking forward now to upcoming games. I mean, what is it now? What have you spoken to the boys? Have you now, like at the start of the season, maybe promotion wasn't in the mind, but now coming now to the end of round 1, you reset those goals now with the boys, now that you can see this is a real possibility now. It's a real possibility that you can do something special at the end of the season.
Yeah. Chubba, I'll tell you something, mate. First year I took off, I think it was the COVID year. I think we won 3 games on the bounce. First 3, we played Heels at a time, first round.
Yeah.
We scored like 8 or 9 goals. Everyone's buzzing. And I had people coming in, like round 3 gone when I win the comp. The minute I heard that, because I've been around football a long time, I was like, you people are high. Like, it's not going to happen. You can't.
Yeah.
So now if someone says to me in the change room, we're going to win the comp, I will headbutt. So, like, it's just it's not something we discuss at all. I guess my main focus, and I had to drum this into a group, is, man, it's a game at a time. We got a game tomorrow. We're going to try and win. The minute that game's done, then we got a game on Saturday we're going to try and plan for. The minute, and I can sense this, and I've seen it the last year, the minute we start thinking ahead, things don't work out. So I'm trying to be very disciplined about, what I say around the group, what the group discusses collectively. I don't want to, plan, we're playing Delhi in 2 weeks. I don't want anyone talking about Delhi in 2 weeks, for example. Like, that's just not on the table at the moment.
Just take it easy
because
on us. Take it easy on us.
Because, no, but mate, you know this league, anybody can beat anybody, 100%. Right? You're 10% off on the night, you get beat.
This
and this
competition doesn't allow you to be off.
Correct, mate. So, like, the minute you start getting little distractions, you pay for it. And my main thing is, especially in a part-time environment, you got to kind of limit the noise, trying to keep people as focused as possible, get them in quickly, short, sharp session, get them out. So that's kind of what we do every week, mate. Like, if we get there at the end, man, I'll be the happiest bloke. Everyone else will be happy. And it's more for the group, like I can't give people anything more than an experience, right? It's not for riches, it's not for fame. You don't get recognized, in Sydney in clubs and restaurants because you play for SD Raiders. But what I'm trying to do here is to get something meaningful, a meaningful group, achieve something together, because those things, they'll last with them forever. I'll need more than money. So that's our main focus, creating a really, really, really big memory for the group and the region. So
have you noticed as well, Goran? Well, I think it has. The standard every year is getting better and better. It is improving.
Oh, mate, 100%. The coach is getting better. The backroom staff is better. People are getting more involved, like volunteers. Like, I got like 6 or 7 people to help me out, right?
100%.
Half of them don't get any money. They just want to be part of the group. They want to be part of the environment.
They're the real champions of the story in the background.
Correct, man. That job is impossible without these people. I don't care how good you are. You ain't doing anything on your own. Like, I don't care how good you are.
Yeah, we have one person as well, our team manager, Gilly Adali, does. Yeah, it's an incredible job what they do, giving their time and heart and soul for the club. It's like you said. But Goran, thank you. Really appreciate it to get an insight with SD Raiders. A lot of people have asked me, get Goran on. The Raiders are flying. I said, yeah, definitely. I'm good friends with Goran. I'm so happy for you. I'm happy you're having a successful season. You deserve it. I know all the effort and the hard work you put in. And, hopefully at the end of the year, you are promoted. I would love to see that because it's a club that I played for when I was young as well. So hopefully one day you do get promoted.
And from your mouth to God's ears, mate. I guess if it's our year, it's our year. We'll certainly do everything on our part, and we'll keep going. So if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. There.
Good luck, Goran. Good luck tomorrow night.
I know you're very busy, and appreciate your time you gave us tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Goran.
All good, guys. Have a good one. Cheers. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go, Andy. Last 2 weeks we were looking at the Premier League. We looked at the NPL1 a little bit this week, which has been great because it's a comp where, like you said, a lot of good players coming through, and a lot of good things are happening. And they're a good story. They're SD Raiders, one of the good successful clubs in that competition, and it'd be great to see them get promoted at the end of the season. Really would.
Yeah, Chubbs, they're a club, guys. I mentioned earlier, they just do things right on and off the field. I was actually at the first grade women's game last night. They played a local derby against Marconi. Unfortunately, both the women's teams are in NPL2, equivalent of the women's competition in the youth and senior space. But, mate, a decent crowd. I remember when my daughter was there was always big clashes between SD and Marconi. It truly brings out the rivalry, and it was amazing to see the rivalry on show with all the youth playing. As you know, the youth play prior to seniors, and then the seniors with the 23s and first grade playing up at Marconi last night. And the crowds really get into it. It just feels like a real local derby. But the club's doing wonders, and in the men's space, as you know, with youth and seniors. Under Nicky Carr, they're really, really thriving. And it looks like the first time I've spoken to Goran, but he's obviously got his head screwed on and taking advantage of the opportunities he's been given. And long may it continue for him.
Let's turn our attention a little bit now quickly overseas. I'll get you to read out the EPL results. And we know we had that big game for some of the Premier League clubs during the week in the Champions League. Arsenal are down 1-0 to PSG, so they're going to have to really... They're up against it maybe to turn it around in France this week. It's going to be an interesting game. I mean, Partey was out suspended. Does he make a difference? Arsenal again losing last night. The big one that we're all talking about, Tottenham, Man U, struggling in the Premier League, but are both on course now to play in the Europa League final. So one of those teams will make Europe. And even it's unthinkable to think when Postecoglou makes the statement he always wins something in his second season. Well, he's on track for maybe still doing that. Man United, if they can come out and make the Champions League after the season they've had, for either team, it would just be incredible.
The biggest thing for both these clubs is having a Champions League carrot to dangle potential transfers in
it changes everything. It just changes everything you do.
Mate, it is massive. For either of these clubs to be in the Champions League, considering the position there, it all of a sudden they've become an attractive club, Chubbs, to be able to offer Europe, as you know, to some players that possibly
Like
thinking
you said,
about.
Man United's the biggest club in the world. Then if they now can throw a Champions League across, it's only going to help, them build, attract players like you said in the summer window. But for either club, it was huge because I don't think anyone would have tipped Man U and even Tottenham to win their first legs as comfortably as they did. So, barring any really catastrophe in the second legs, they really should be playing off each other at Spain come the Europa League final.
Absolutely. Look, the only one I think was a little bit flattered, which we know was there was a red card in there, was a Man United result.
Yeah.
But
a 3-0 lead, it's a big lead.
It is, and they're back at home. You'd like to think that they can't.
They do concede goals, like we've seen in the weekend. Another 4-3 lost result. There are a topsy-turvy team, but definitely in Europe, and Man U's funny. They're the only club undefeated in Europe out of all the Premier. Yeah. They're undefeated. It's an incredible run.
Unbelievable. Let's quickly run through a few of these results because I do want to also touch on the championship. There's the
huge
playoffs.
The playoffs, correct.
Playoffs coming up there. But so we start off the early game. Man City 1, Wolves 0. That was Saturday morning our time. Aston Villa made another inroad towards our top 5 with a 1-0 win at Fulham. Leicester 2, Southampton 0 in the battle of the cellar dwellers down there. Everton and Ipswich drew 2-2. Cost me a multi there. Everton Chubbs just quietly. Arsenal 1, Bournemouth 2, as you mentioned. I think Arsenal definitely would have had one eye on the midweek game, Champions League. West Ham and Tottenham overnight drew 1-1, as did Newcastle and Brighton 1-1. We just can't beat Brighton this season, both home and away. And then we had that game, as you mentioned, Brighton. Man United actually went ahead early 1-0, and then Brighton were winning 4-1 and 2 late goals for Manchester United. That game finished 4-3. And the other one, you could say a bit of a championship or premiership hangover for Liverpool. They went down 3-1 to Chelsea. Another team with a massive result heading into the top 5.
Just give us those how's that top 5 table looking now? Because that's the only really interesting left for like that.
It is, Chubbs, and it was just it was disaster for Newcastle. As we drew and all the other teams around us won, including Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest are playing tomorrow morning. So we got Liverpool on top. Arsenal second now. Arsenal are only 3 points ahead of Man City now.
I know. They're coming into this top 5 race too.
Yeah. Man City. So Arsenal's on 67. Man City 64. Newcastle and Chelsea both on 63. They've all played 35 games. Nottingham Forest, as I mentioned, are 3 points behind on 60. They actually play tomorrow morning. They've got a catch-up game. They've got their game tomorrow morning against Crystal Palace. And then you've got Aston Villa still in the hunt on 60 points, and then there's a 7-point gap to Bournemouth. And we know the bottom 3 there have all been relegated in the Premier League. But I just wanted to mention, as I said, the final round of the Championship was on Saturday night, our time. Chubbs, it was a prime time, 9:30 p.m. Correct. All the games off, as you know. So just looking at the results, we know both Leeds and Burnley, and they both finished on 100 points, but Leeds were crowned champions.
That was incredible, the first teams to do that.
Yeah, it was the first time. They've just broken records, both these clubs, all season, Charles. We mentioned it last week. And then we had Sheffield United, Sunderland had already secured their spot. There was still a bit to play going into the last round with the 5th and 6th spot. So that was Coventry, who finished 5th. And remember, Coventry, Chubbs, I don't know if you remember Darren Huckabee back in the playing for Coventry. And Bristol City was that team who wrapped up the 6th spot, only 2 points ahead of Blackburn and Millwall, who will be ruining their chances.
Dion Dublin at Coventry.
Yeah, correct. Dion Dublin was another one. So yeah, it's just massive now for playoffs. As we know, the playoffs kick off there in the Championship, and it's just another competition. And there's 4 teams now vying for that last spot to make it to get promoted to the Premier League, which we know is worth big money for them.
Andy, who do you think is going to finish in this top 5?
Oh, Chubbs, look, you know what? I don't think there was much of a surprise with the weekend's results because there is so much to play. But
if Nottingham Forest don't win tomorrow, I don't think they'll make it.
They've got the tougher of the draw, Chubbs. They've definitely got the tougher of the draw. That's where Nottingham Forest. I actually tend to agree with you in a way. There'll be a lot of pressure on them. I think now that they don't have that focus on FA Cup, they're a big chance tomorrow morning. But you're right. I think if they fail to pick up at least 1 point tomorrow morning,
I
they
mean,
might
they will
struggle.
still be happy to make the Europa League if they finish sixth. It'd be a
I
terrific
hope
season
so.
from where they were,
Absolutely.
but they'll be disappointed with being in the top five all season. But as we know, these last 4, 5, 6 games in the Premier League that run home are the biggest challenge.
Oh, big time, Chubbs. And I think for them, being in that FA Cup semi-final and playing those games leading up to that as well it's difficult to sustain when you don't really have the depth and you've only really got your starting 11 that you try to maybe shift 1 or 2 players here or there each week. It's really difficult to compete with the bigger teams come this time of the season. I think we mentioned this the last couple of weeks as well. So
it is pretty
but yeah,
exciting. It is exciting because I think it is going to go to round 38. And we know
well,
only one team goes to Europa on the 6th spot and one goes to the conference in the
the
7th spot.
biggest game with the bearing this week is us versus Chelsea, Chubb. Sunday
Correct, that's a
night.
huge game because Chelsea's starting to find form. Yes, Chelsea met a Liverpool who just won and done a lot of changes and just won a championship, which would have suited them at home. But you can't deny how well they played.
Correct, yeah, and look, well, I watched our game last night against Brighton, and we're not very fluent or great in the first half, but second half, I think we came into our own, and I think if both teams bring their game, it'll be a top game. It's an early kickoff, Chubbs, for us for a Sunday night, 9 p.m. Really looking forward to it, but I think that's going to have a massive bearing on the top five, the result of that particular game.
Well, that brings up, like we said, we're going to now look at, we'll be looking now this midweek if Arsenal, let's see. I don't think they'll turn it around with PSG. I think it's hard, but if they do, it'd be great for the Premier League. And like I said, we'll be looking at Man U, Tottenham. If we can get an All England Europa League final, would be amazing for the Premier League.
Yeah, look, I'd like to see Arsenal turn that around. Can they do it? They were.
I think Partey missing was a huge thing. Now that he's back from suspension, it's going to make a big difference because they can push Rice a little bit forward because Rice is not really suited in that 6 role. But you know what?
Yeah.
I know Liverpool, we went there and won 1-0, but it was the day when our goalkeeper, Alisson, had a blinder of blinders because they put us under the pump. It's a very hard place to go, but, and I'll tell you something, if Arsenal can get out of that leg, they can go all the way and win it. I mean, I know Barcelona and Inter Milan are huge teams, and that was a great game, 3-3, but, I still believe the winner can still come out of Arsenal or PSG on this side of the draw.
Oh, look, I agree, but I think Arsenal really need to improve going into that atmosphere, going to Paris and trying to get a result. But you never know, mate. They proved last round they can do it, with their performance against Real Madrid. So,
Definitely.
I definitely wouldn't write them off.
No. Anyway, that's another jam-packed show here at Football Fever and Chubba TV. Andy, thank you once again, man. I know you had to rush back from work commitments to make the show, and we love everything you bring to the show. And again, we had the Western Sydney Star, Anthony Panzopoulos. We want to thank George Timotheo from the Blacktown Spartans, Goran Lubija from the SD Raiders. We thank everyone that supported the show so much. Whoever we asked to come on, they always put their hand up, and we really appreciate it. And we'll be back next Monday night again with more scoops, more reviews, and more interviews from the people in our game and football in this country.
All right.
Good night, Andy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chubbs.